And here we are, live talk with Becky Chernek. And boy, let me tell you, I have a terrific featured guest speaker on with me tonight, Mr. Randy Cauthen. And he is, I'm going to tell you right now, guys, whether you believe this or not, or he believes this, he is the guru when it comes to reinsurance. And he has his own company, and it is Tactical Reinsurance Consultants. I will let him get into all that, give you a brief bio. But before we do all that, first and foremost, I do want to make sure that we give our condolences to the 64 victims that have lost their lives in this most tragic incident that took place last night on American Airlines at the Potomac River. I'll tell you right now, guys, it hit home to me because I've lived there like my entire childhood life, let's just put it this way, until I left and went to Atlanta, Georgia. And, you know, so our hearts and prayers certainly go out to their family, connections, and friends. Okay. So as I mentioned, I do have a great featured guest speaker, Randy Cauthen, on tonight. But before we get started, for those that are new to this channel, I'm Becky Chernek, and I have been providing the very best when it comes to finance and insurance training, but more than that. I mean, I'm talking about I'm talking about a full, complete, strategic, comprehensive training program from the time that that customer lands on that dealership website, working with BDC, from working with BDC, working with sales, presentation, negotiation, and from that to process to managing the desk. The desk today is so critical. It is so important that we know that they're the hub of all today. That's where everything starts. They align with our sales department. They align with what goes on in F&I. And they are held to a higher standard. And so this is why it's so imperative that we do our due diligence when we work with the desk, and then also work with F&I and making sure that we master those skill sets when it comes to impacting performance in that F&I office. Okay, so listen up. We are going live, and I'm going live on YouTube, going live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. So if you like what we're talking about, I hope that you do. Please, if you would, hit the like button and share. And also, while you're at it, subscribe. So Randy, you're on. And if you would, for our dealers and viewers, if you would share your brief bio to get us started.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Becky, and thanks for those kind words at the beginning towards the tragedy that happened last night. Yeah. My background is in 1988, I started with a company called Pat Ryan and Associates as an F&I specialist. I worked in F&I, got promoted to an account rep and district manager in the state of Arkansas. They had just picked up a group of 30 dealers that were in a credit life insurance reinsurance company. And my job was to call on those dealers, grow that dealer group, and improve their dollar per car. Shortly after, I brought twin boys into the world, and one of my clients, one of my dealers said, you know, you probably right about now could use a little time at home to be with those kids at night. Would you consider coming to work for us and running our variable department? So I did. I went to work for the dealership in Little Rock. We were a GM franchise, and I was lucky enough to go to the General Motors Academy. I was able to grow that book of business, that dealership, to be the #1 volume store in our zone. We were #1 in CSI nationwide, which we were very proud of. We even had an Addy Award for great TV commercials that we worked with, a great ad group. But one of the things I missed was working with dealers more than just one, and more than just making that commute every day to the dealership. So I went back to work for Pat Ryan. I stayed there for 10 years. I was promoted to regional vice president, moved to Kansas City, then got promoted to Dallas, Texas, and eventually was the divisional vice president over the Western U.S. In 2022, I wound up starting my own agency with a partner in Dallas. Did that for 4 years. After that, we shut it down because AutoNation was our biggest client and they decided to do something different. And instead of me trying to reinvent the world, I decided to get back into the world of third-party administrators and OEM and insurance companies. So I joined APCO in Easy Care. I worked there for a few years, about 4 years, traveled around doing some training for F&I and sales on Why Buy Here programs, and wound up doing great. And I got promoted and worked as the divisional vice president for the Western US there. I got recruited by a company that had 150 dealerships in Canada. So out of Dallas, Texas, I would go up to Canada several times a month, almost every week. And we oversaw those dealerships and grew it to about 250 rooftops. In all of these positions, obviously, not only was I doing F&I consulting and sales training, but I had to sit down with dealers and talk about their reinsurance companies. So all throughout my journey, I made sure to take lots of notes, ask all the questions I could, so I wasn't afraid to talk about reinsurance to a dealer. And after a certain period of time, I was actually asked by a group of dealers, the Mid-America dealers in Kansas City, to be on their board of directors. We took that offshore to the British Virgin Islands, and we would meet and talk about how to grow that business. And that was really fun. I wound up leaving that Canadian company and going to work for CNA National, and there for a few years, and then wound up going to work for Southwest Re, which is now Acrisure Protection Group. April of this past year, I decided to start my own company, and that's when Tactical Reinsurance Consultants was started. And I've worked with admin companies, insurance companies. I've been an expert witness for a client in a case that they were involved in. And I love what I do. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show tonight and talk about reinsurance. And I promise you, I won't talk over your heads. It's my first word was car. So I am a car guy that happens to know a little bit about reinsurance.
Well, I love your background. I mean, it's obviously extensive. And so therefore, there's nothing better than talking to a car person that's in the insurance business, right?
Right.
That really has a good understanding of this side of the business. And the reason why I say that, I had a bit of time on that side of the business as well for maybe a year when I decided to play the part of this VP East Coast for First Extended. And I got to tell you, talk about a wake-up call. Lots to learn as it pertains to these different models and what's really in the best interest for a car dealer. So I know enough to make me dangerous. I know enough that if we're going to apply all these wonderful best practices and principles to impact results for a dealer, ultimately that means something for their business, right? For that book of business, their portfolio, and how all that plays out. And they have to plan for that. So I know enough to make me dangerous, but
That's right.
I think today, more so than ever, so I think I might have mentioned, I thought about doing, or maybe this is when we were talking, a live on reinsurance. And, so I thought, over the last year, and I just didn't do it. And it just got away from me for whatever reason. I believe this could be a better timing. January, February, where dealers are looking into their portfolios and wondering, do I have the right deal? Am I okay here? is there something else? I mean, there's so much going on right now with dealers determining if they're utilizing the right models. So, you talk about dealer-owned reinsurance and participation programs. How
Right.
have they evolved over the past, I don't know, 15 years?
Well, quite a bit. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, my first job was because of a group of dealers that had a credit insurance reinsurance company. And that's really the first type of reinsurance company, was a credit insurance company. And the reason for that was to give dealers the opportunity to make more than just the state regulated commissions that they could make. And I don't know that it ever happened, but I certainly heard about it a lot in the industry, where agents would pay a little bit on the side or somehow funnel money to the dealers, and the companies that were big and did it in a compliant way said, why don't we give them an opportunity to own a reinsurance company? And it was great because dealers then had a vested interest in the performance and who they sold. In other words, if the dealer owns the reinsurance company, they're going to make sure that 100% of the customers that are eligible are going to at least hear about it, versus somebody that comes in and says, oh, by the way, I'd like to buy that product. So the loss ratios were better and reinsurance took off. Dealers made a lot of money in their credit insurance reinsurance company. Service contracts came along. And service contracts, it was like, okay, well, if I can do that on my credit insurance, why can't I do that on my service contracts, my VSC business? Mm-hmm. So then dealers had an Arizona life company for their credit insurance company, and then they set up a CFC, a controlled form corporation, for their vehicle service contracts. And they started making money out of vehicle service contracts. Once again, knowing that if they have a vested interest in that product, they're going to make sure that every customer gets a solid presentation. That's where you come in, sees a value proposition, gets provided a product to purchase that matches their driving and ownership habits. So off went CFCs. During that time, dealers started thinking, well, and insurance companies, administrators, why don't we have a company where both can exist? And then non-controlled foreign corporations began. Controlled foreign corporations mean one person or a few people own that company. Non-controlled foreign corporations just means that there's at least 11 people that own it. Nobody owns more than 10% of that company. They all put their money in the same company. Service contracts, credit insurance back then, and now they're taking GAP, all the ancillary products, and NCFCs were great and have been for a long time. As time has evolved, dealers, and in the 20 teens, we had a scare with NCFCs with some regulations where they were trying to look at, are these legitimate companies, or are these passive investments offshore? Most of the reinsurance companies were able to, and as far as I know, all of them were able to pass the test and keep their NCFC status, and there's still great companies out there. TacticalRe is a company I used to work for in Canada, and they have a very solid non-controlled foreign corporation. Even some of the OEMs seed business into that company. Since then, dealers have really taken on to their CFCs, now DOWCs, a dealer-owned warranty company, where they own the company. They do a retail cost accounting, so it takes some of the benefits of net operating losses for their taxes, and it pushes it out so they don't have to pay taxes on their profits. And that's been a very popular deal. And here recently, and I say recently, probably in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer, domestic companies and Indian tribe nations have been domiciles where dealers have started their reinsurance companies. And that's great. I think a lot of people prefer to have their business here in the US. They feel more comfortable with it. But I can tell you that the reinsurance companies that are domiciled offshore are proven. Could there be some outlying areas that are not legitimate? Possibly, but the automotive F&I space is run by a lot of large insurance companies that do their due diligence and make sure that these are proven and solid investments for their dealers. So all of these are great alternatives. It just depends on what the dealer's looking to do and where they want to invest.
So we have a question from the audience. And so Mr. Mike Moran, can labor rates and parts pricing have an effect on dealers' reserve over time?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great question and comment. Dealers just here recently with the COVID epidemic and parts shortages, being able to get your hands on certain parts, putting customers in rental cars for longer times, price increases to the parts, labor issues that cause them to have to pay more in their labor rates, so they increase their labor rates. So premiums are set, let's say they're set in 2018, and they're chugging along based on the frequency of repair, the severity of repairs, and all the actuarial data is supportive of these rates. They don't expect that a part is going to go up, 5 times in 1 year. And my understanding is that General Motors, as an example, had 5 parts increases in 1 year.
Wow.
So when you have the rate set for this environment and all of a sudden prices go up, labor rates go up, then all of a sudden the reserves aren't there to support those losses. So you mentioned now is a perfect time for a dealer to take a look at their reinsurance company. Most of them should be getting their session statements and their year-end financials right about now or very soon to look at it and see what kind of adjustments should they make to their reserves, right? And increase their reserves if their provider doesn't, come to that conclusion before then.
Well, it's interesting because I've had some conversations or been a part of conversations, not to say that I am the reinsurance guru, like I said, know enough to make me dangerous, but part of that conversation is what is happening in service. It is the increase in parts, it is the increase in labor costs that is really affecting how these portfolios are performing. So how does a dealer look at that and prepare, for, to ensure that their portfolio is performing at a higher level rather than find out, I don't know, 1 or 2 years later that they're not where they thought that they were going to be? I think, let me ask you maybe I'll ask this way. How are dealers able to monitor their book of business? How does that work? Are they giving access to that to be able to see what's really happening in real time?
Yeah, absolutely. The problem lies in the fact that if somebody's not comfortable in reviewing it with the dealer and there's no request for that, then they don't bring it up. But a dealer should be able to get their session statements every month to see where their loss ratios are. It tells them how many dollars in claims were spent. They can also dig a little deeper by requesting claims runs. And the claims reports would show them, are there specific vehicles that are breaking in certain areas? And, being in the car business, we all work our pay plans. Mm-hmm. And people in the service department know that, hey, this particular vehicle always has a strut issue or has a issue with the with the AC system. So they go looking for that repair. And a customer can come in because their power window doesn't roll up and they decide, hey, let me check that AC system or that strut. And lo and behold, I think we can get that paid for by the warranty company. Well, that warranty company is obviously the dealer's other pocket, their other company. So you do have to monitor the claims. You do have to be hands-on and provide solutions by bringing those reports to the dealer, sharing it with them, sitting down and talking to the dealer, the service manager, and getting them involved. So service departments don't think of it as a buffet line, and they can put everything they want on their tray and, go to the end and pay the register, get the warranty company to pay for your ticket. It just shouldn't work that way.
Okay. I understand that. However, there are dealers out there that want to keep that reinsurance private, confidential, and don't want necessarily their employees to know what's going on. And, so it's kind of, how do you manage that? Where, they're so used to the OEM, right? And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have to have a different behavior. How do you manage that without being able to make sure that they're a part of the idea behind why we do what we do when it comes to reinsurance?
Well, that's a great question, and there's a couple of answers to it. One is, it is important that if a dealer is in a reinsurance company, that they do consider letting his team know that they are in a reinsurance company, and that it's their choice, that the opportunity to buy new equipment in their service department, new lifts, expand the service department could happen from the profits from their reinsurance company. So it's up to the dealer. I never told the dealer, oh, you have to tell them that you own the reinsurance company, but it's always recommended that they let them know that, hey, we've taken a vested interest in this because we want to be able to provide the very best product to our customers. Now, the one thing that they are, and you mentioned that they are accustomed to dealing with the OEMs, but the one thing the OEMs will do is they'll audit their repairs, and they'll come in and take a look at them, and they will charge them back for repairs that should not have been done. And that can become a huge liability to the dealer. So unfortunately, unscrupulous activities in a service department can lead to that. Now, there's a lot of dealers out there that have great service departments that do everything up on the up and up. But consider this, you're a client, you pull into the service drive and you have a power window that's out, you want to get it fixed. But then they come back and say, oh, by the way, you have a AC unit that needs to be replaced, or you have a strut that needs to be replaced. All that does is leads to the customer thinking, okay, well, maybe this car isn't as good as I thought it was. It's not necessarily a good thing that they're using the service contract to fix the car when it hasn't been reported as an issue. So I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes they can get a little too aggressive on trying to fix things that really don't need to be fixed. If they're broken, that's what the service contract's there for. Fix what's broken.
So we have another question. I believe this is from Facebook. I'm not sure. Maybe having a shop foreman confirm repairs on items of high frequency. Shocks. Appreciate you, Randy.
Thank you, Brody. Yes, that's a great idea, and we do recommend that. We actually recommend too for managers, service managers, that if it's over a certain dollar repair, that they get involved. It could be $700, it could be $1,000, but in a lot of cases, dealers that are very hands-on with trying to generate the most that they can out of their reinsurance position will get their service department to manage that and get involved. And some even put together, Becky, they put together pay plans based off of their reinsurance production and their loss ratios.
Yeah, I would think that would make sense. And, so during my bit of time in that world, and, it's interesting because, dealers deal with so much. But I remember where, we're a part of the claim process. We are a part of that support system and making sure that we do what we can to take care of the claim, to take care of service, You know,
Right.
we want to be a part of that team. We want to be a partner, right, with that entire process. But at one time, I got a phone call from one of the F&I folks, and she was telling me, Becky, your product doesn't cover anything. It doesn't cover nothing. I'm like, what? Well, did some digging. The product was covered. The problem was the customer was elsewhere at another dealership.
Wow.
I've never heard of this before. Double dipping, meaning they got paid, but told the customer they still needed payment that the warranty company didn't pick it up. So there's a lot of digging. There's a lot of relationship there that you have to have with the dealership. You know, that way, I mean, you've got to partner to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think that that's super critical. And there are times where dealers don't have that partnership as much as they should have it.
Well, absolutely. And you're as a service contract provider, you are a fiduciary for the dealer, right? It's your job to watch over their money and take care of it like it's your own. So you want to find people that are double dipping. I mean, that's pretty blatant and egregious to do something like that. But
no, I mean, I found it all.
Surprise me. Yeah, you hear it all, right? So, but you know, one of the things that's helped too is disappearing deductibles over the years came in place that enticed the dealer, gave them a financial benefit to come back to the selling dealer and have no deductible or a lower deductible if they go back to the selling dealer. And like my former dealer told me, he goes, Randy, we sell the first car on the showroom floor, but the rest of them get sold out of the service department. If they have a good experience in service, they'll come back and buy another vehicle from us. And he was right. You know, if you give a customer good customer service, they won't consider going elsewhere. And if you can control the costs and the service experience, you're going to be much better off in your reinsurance position. I'll tell you this. I had a client a few years ago that we were looking at his claims reports, and we were looking at in-transit claims. And those are the claims that are done at a different dealership or a certified repair facility. And those claims were lower than his average in-house claims. So we said, you know, there might be a problem there, that your people are thinking this is a buffet line and they can just add on repairs. When they're going to other dealerships, they want to fix what's broken and get the car out of there. When they're coming in here and they say, hey, I've got this service contract, they're going, oh, great. You know, I don't have to hit you up, Mr. Customer, for the extra money. I'll just bill it to the service contract. So those are some really blatant things. For the most part, and I guess the original question that Mike had, which is a great one, is how far do reserves have to be changed to take over the impact of parts and labor rates? And that's something that now at this time of the year, you should be sitting down with your provider and having that discussion. From a provider standpoint, having been an agent and a rep, you go into a dealer and you say, hey, our rates are going up. Some reps and agents don't like that conversation because they don't understand or feel confident enough that it's not my money. We're not increasing our fee. And in some cases, maybe you are, but you're increasing their money going into their reinsurance company.
Right.
So
you got to adjudicate the admin, and that goes up because that's going to take care of the total expense, or otherwise they don't have a reinsurance program. I mean, how many times has that happened, you know, over the years, that you let it float, whatever, and find out, oh, by the way, not quite where you want it to be.
That's right.
Because you didn't have that conversation, that serious, let's get together, meeting of the mind conversation. So we have some comments here. Randy, hey, Randy, good to see you. Thanks for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you, Randall.
All right. See, this is good stuff. This is great.
Yeah.
We've got Matthew. Thank you. Love your lives, Rebecca Chernek. Yay. Thank you,
Excellent.
Matthew. I appreciate it. Glad you're here. I've got to this one. I got to tell you, it's been a coming, and I've been thinking about this for a while. I'm glad I was able to pull the trigger, with Randy. He certainly is a great host to talk through this topic. It's not the easiest, that's for sure. Can a dealer draw down on their reserve and use that money for other investments?
Yeah, another great question, Mike. Absolutely. The dealer can, there's earned premium and reserves, and there is unearned premium and reserves. The unearned premium means you have to hold on to it for claims. But once that premium earns out, right? So if it's a 60-month contract, then it gets earned out 1/60th per month. Anything that's left over is surplus. And they can take that money, and the insurance companies will have their limit. So they might have 110% of unearned premiums need to stay in the company because they don't want all the money to go out and then there's no money to pay for claims. But any surplus can be taken out and invested much more aggressively within the company. So when I say take it out, they can take it out of the more conservative investments that they have in the unearned premium, because they need to keep that capital. They need to be much more conservative. They don't want to put it into a stock that tanks and now there's no money there. They want to have a very conservative fund that's supporting those dollars. Once it earns out, they can put it in stocks. They can borrow against it. They can buy service lifts. They can do whatever they want. They can take it as a dividend, or they can make a loan with their company and pay it back to them. The dealers that I worked for in Canada had a great saying, and that was, if I'm going to write a check, I'd like to write it to myself if I can. So if you're going to borrow money, why not borrow it from yourself and pay yourself back interest, and be able to do it, with the funds that are available for you. Pay down your floor plan, recondition vehicles, add to your service department or your used car department. They can use the money for whatever they want.
Got another question for you. Chris Kerr, transparency is key and dealers are getting more involved in their reinsurance programs. Yes?
Absolutely. And if they don't, Chris, I'll tell you that I think some dealers have been very fortunate and have made a lot of money in reinsurance. I had one dealer was talking with his family members, and I was in this meeting, and he says, the ranch that we have? He goes, where do you think that money came from? It came from our reinsurance company. So there's a lot of money that's been made in reinsurance, and it's been a set it and forget it kind of relationship. They set up the reinsurance company, they fill out the paperwork, they capitalize their company if it's a reinsurance company. They start making the money on paper, they start seeing it, and then they forget about it. But every year, heck, twice a year, the dealer should be looking at it intently, sitting down, trying to figure out how they can maximize it. Are they putting enough business in there? And that's where the transparency comes in, is you should encourage that dealer to have those kinds of conversations with them and not just talk about how we're going to get more TOs done or how we're going to, get better service contract penetration. You need to talk about their reinsurance position and have that at least twice a year.
So how do you think a dealer can best manage or monitor that book of business? Like when they look at the session statements, what are they looking at? Can you give us a deeper dive a little bit on what are they supposed to be looking at? I mean, there's so many different fees tucked into this or that or the other. Right. And there's a lot going on. So every company does a little bit of this or that. They pay for cancellations. They pay for, there's so many different fees that are associated with it. What do you recommend? And what's the best way to figure out what you're working with?
First of all, for everybody involved in the transaction, the agent, the third-party administrator, the insurance company, and the dealer, the owner of the reinsurance company, or if they're in a participation program, which is like a bank retro, there's not much that gets disclosed. But if you own a reinsurance company, you should definitely be involved in what are the fees? What are my admin costs? What are the taxes that I'm paying? If there's premium taxes to be paid out, seating fees. Are there claims fees? Because some companies charge an admin fee and then there's a claim fee on top of it. The transfer fees. Insurance companies make money on transferring a service contract. Cancellation fees, insurance companies make money off of that. And that's where some of the DOWCs and things like that, they start, making that money for themselves. But as it relates to all of those fees, it's just having a basic conversation with your agent, your insurance company, your third-party administrator, whoever you're partnering with, if you're a dealer, is sit down, take notes, and find out what the numbers are. What they can do proactively going forward is, are you looking at claims currently that are higher than your claims from last year? And typically you'll get a monthly session statement. So on that session statement, you can look at the month, you can look at the year to date, and you can look at inception to date. So if your inception to date is lower than your year to date, that means they're going up, right? So if you have a 60% loss ratio inception to date, but now you're at 70%, what's causing that? And remember that in reinsurance, you're talking about premiums that were written 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago that are now earning out and paying for claims today. Right. So what went on back then? Like when COVID hit, we're going to be sitting down with dealers now talking about, why did my loss ratios go up? Well, that's when you were selling 30 cars instead of 100 cars because you didn't have any cars. Right? That's an impact.
That's right. So I got to tell you, you've got a lot of comments going on here, Randy. So we learned so much from you today. Great job, Randy. And that's coming from Michelle Orr.
Thank
and
you.
We've got another LinkedIn user. How important is vehicle service contract term to positions' overall health?
I love that question. And I'd love to recognize the LinkedIn user because it's a good question.
I know, right? I don't know.
No, that's great. I preach that a lot, right? There's a lot, and from a reinsurance position, it's important because if you sell a 10-year contract, guess what? It's going to take 10 years to earn that contract out. What kills me is when you go into a dealership and there's the dealer holding his head because he came back from a 20 group, or he's just looking at his statement and his chargebacks are going up. And they don't realize that it's because F&I, just because the menu prints it this way, they're showing the longest term contract. And when you and I learned how to do F&I, Becky, I know one of the things was, based on your trade-in, it looks like you put 15,000 miles on your car per year, or based on what you told me, your driving habits, it seems like you're putting 12,000 miles on your car per year. You should customize and base it on the loan, right? If they're doing a 5-year loan, a 6-year loan, don't sell them a 10-year contract or an 8-year contract. You want the customer to have a reason to go, oh, you know what? It'd be a great time to trade my car in. I'm not covered any longer. Let me go ahead and get a new car. So,
where I go with this is something that I understand where you're going with that. And I don't want to break into that too much, go a deeper dive, but right. I will say, I think this is a training moment for Absolutely. The entire staff, that they need to have a better understanding, as to the reason why it is always better to maybe shorten the term as opposed to having or closing the deal at a longer term. That goes with anything, frankly. Yes. As far as I'm concerned, with that first pencil going out at 72 months with no money down, it goes hand in hand with making sure that, why do we do this and what's the purpose behind it? But I do believe that, offering a longer term to go to a shorter term helps to for the customer to be able to fit the payment. And Absolutely. So there's some things that but I think the dealer needs to have a good understanding. I think the managers need to all be on the same page. And that to
Right.
me is certainly a learning moment, but a good question and
Yeah.
makes all the sense in the world. So we have a Linda, good knowledge to know. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we have another, Chris Kerr, agreed. They should be monitoring to make sure that their partners are managing their money along with letting their employees understand they are participating in the risk. So vehicles should should reconnect properly and make sure that their loss ratios are as low as possible.
Yeah, reconned. He was saying that they should be reconned. And Chris, you're on the money.
Yeah, sorry, I did see.
That is a huge issue with used car departments where they don't recon a car, and all of a sudden they're paying for it with the VSC. And let's face it, yeah, there's a new product, not new, but for me it's relatively new, the key replacement. How many times does a car go out from the used car department with one key fob? And if they buy key replacement, whoa, well, guess what? I'm going to come back and get one for my wife. And my daughter drives the car every once in a while. Let me get one for her. So there's a lot of places where there's opportunities to take advantage of these products. And reconning a car is really important. And if you do a great job in reconning a car, you make it showroom new or as close as you can, you get it right before it's delivered, your loss ratios are going to definitely go down.
We have another question from Earl Sticks Brown. Here you are, Sticks. Thanks, Randy and Becky. How can ancillary aftermarket companies see to various dealer reinsurance programs?
Yes, that's an important issue for people like Mr. Brown and others who have agencies or their administrators, and they want to seed into different companies. So you have to have an accounting mechanism to be able to seed into different reinsurance companies. That can be through your insurance provider that you're a partner with, or you can set up your own insurance company, a Turks and Caicos company, or some company that is more an insurance company than a reinsurance company. Technically, a reinsurance company is supposed to take the money from an insurance company, hold it, make investment income to drive drive profits, underwriting profit, and hold on to that. You can set up companies where that money can then be retro seeded out to different reinsurance companies. It takes paperwork. It takes somebody that knows what's doing, who's how to do that. And I work with an individual here in Kansas City by the name of Alan Markowitz and his son Brian Markowitz, who are really sharp and reinsurance pros, and they know how to do those things or how to advise on how to do those things. Having a good accounting firm to support that. There are ways to get through that. And there are companies that you can partner with, Earl, that would help you do that as well.
So is that who you recommend for dealers that are wanting to set up their reinsurance programs? Is that the same company? Yeah.
I do. In fact, anybody who ever asks me, I because I've known Alan for 30 years, and Brian, his son, has been doing a phenomenal job. They run, I don't know how many reinsurance companies, but it's a lot. They know it inside and out. They work with a company called Marks Nelson for their accounting, and they do a great job of helping a dealer do it legitimately, set up the companies in a domicile that they feel comfortable in, and set up a reinsurance company and manage it for them. There are other companies out there for sure that do it. And a lot of these third-party administrators and insurance companies will do it in-house or have their own firm that they prefer to use. But again, I've known of the Markowitz team for a long time, and they do a great job.
Earl, thank you so much for your asking that question, and I'm glad that you were able to be here tonight. And we have Oh, Steve Apicella. Do you know Steve Apicella? Because
Absolutely, I know Mr. Apicella. I
he
do.
is he is like the man. I love Steve Apicella. Okay, so when our industry experts collaborate, sharing their knowledge and experience, there's so much new growth to be captured before, during, and after the vehicle sale. Tune in to
Amen.
Rebecca Chernek. I like you, Mr. Steve Apicella. Thank
Yes.
you so much.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. And
so
he's got a great program and company and philosophy and mindset that, you know, the people that come in and buy a car today don't always buy the products that are offered to them. They may not see the value at that time. They may not have the need created in their mind enough to want to buy them. And there's some great opportunities after the sale for customers to have the chance to buy a service contract, key replacement, uh, windshield, paintless dent repair, whatever the product may be. And he's got a great program and a great company that supports that method. So I think Steve's got a great mindset. More people should think like him.
well, I met Steve Apicella years ago, right? So I was already on the verge. I was there. I was all about, what happens after the sale. And all of a sudden, I mean, I was working on it. This is years there, I don't know, well before COVID. Well before
Right.
COVID. And I realized, I get tired of banging my head up against the wall, expecting, don't get me wrong, a little bit different here, but I was always back in the service, and I was, and I know other folks that actually spiff their service writers. Hey, by the way, send me up a deal, and if I make it happen, I'll give you $50 out of it. But it's few and far between. And we've always tried to do these service drive programs, right? I mean,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
That's where it's at after the sale. Make it happen. And there are
Right.
few and far between that work it. So instead of
Yeah.
banging my head up against the wall, can we automate this?
Yeah.
Let's just make it happen.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't
Absolutely.
you know it? Here's Mr. Steve Apicella. He has automated this bad boy.
He has.
He has
He has.
made not only that, you got the app, you got the products in front of that customer,
Right.
but it's really something dear to my heart is that it alleviates the pain point of when that customer goes back to the service department. How many times has this happened where the service writer tells the customer that product they can't find?
Right.
They can't find it in the DMS, and it was
Yeah.
sold.
Yeah.
So he matches all the products to the car, right?
Yeah.
And it's a no-brainer. It
Right.
makes the claim processing procedure so much easier.
Yeah. And if you have a
Right?
really sharp consumer, right, and in today's world of identity theft, a lot of people get advised, don't keep that kind of information in your car. Keep your insurance and your registration, because if you get pulled over by the cops, you need to have that. But keep all that information at home, locked away. And that's great. But when you pull into the service drive and they go, well, you don't have your service contract. Sorry, I can't, I don't know where it is, can't find it, whatever. Well, here's the address.
Well, a deal. Can I tell you how many times these third-party providers are not on a DMS, well, or not included in that vehicle service contract product provider portfolio, right?
Right.
And it's a third-party provider, so it's outside of that. So they don't
Right.
see it. And meanwhile, they pay a pretty penny when it comes to tire and wheel, right? And I love tire and wheel, but
Sure.
if in the event they find, oh, well, we don't have tire and wheel coverage here. Well, what do you mean? Now all of a sudden they're back, in finance going, cancel everything.
Yeah.
I knew this wasn't going to go ahead and cover. And meanwhile, they had the coverage. It just wasn't being identified. So this is really ideal in that to be able to streamline that and make sure that claims are processed so much easier. Mike has a great information show. Thank you, Becky and Randy. Yay.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mike,
it.
for being on. I appreciate it, Chris, and everyone for being on tonight. We really appreciate the questions. Kim, lots of good reminders today. It's been a great session. Still
Thank
learning
you.
from you, Randy, 12 years later. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about Kim.
Kim is a wonderful lady who is a big wig with Tricor Automotive Group in Canada. And I remember hiring her on and training her, and learned a lot from Kim. And hopefully I was able to bring something to the table for Kim. But she's a great lady. She's got wonderful kids. There are no kids anymore, but she's doing a great job in Canada for all the dealers up there.
Well, great. You know, I did have some time in Canada myself and worked with some of the
That's right.
dealers. I did facilitation
Yeah.
for some tech dealer services in Ontario, Canada. And I got to tell you, I had a blast. I really did. I had a blast. I love those guys. They're good. They're good people.
They're incredible.
We had some good laughs along the way, I'll tell you. All right. And then we have Steve. And today's consumers don't need to be sold. They simply desire to be educated and supported. If we desire a reoccurring customer beyond a one-time transactions, cheers to both. To you both.
Thank you. Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And let me say this, you know, here's an interesting thing that seeing Kim for a second just made me think of. You know, in today's, and we won't get political, but in today's world, they're talking about tariffs, right?
Yeah.
Tariffs with different countries. As it relates to reinsurance, how is that going to impact parts rates? And how does a dealer need to look at that for their reinsurance company going forward when parts are manufactured in Mexico, parts are manufactured in Canada, they're manufactured all over the world. So, you know, I think it's great. I'm very happy with the fact that we're trying to make things, you know, America first. But we also have to take into effect when you own a reinsurance company that, hey, maybe we need to address this, and maybe we need to look at revising our rates and putting a little more, because this could hit us in a couple of years. It's going to hit them now, and you can't do anything about the reserves you sold and the contracts you sold 2 and 3 and 4 years ago. But you need to start doing something today about the underwriting profits you're trying to get for tomorrow.
I see where you're going with that. Thanks, guys. Great job from the unknown user on LinkedIn.
Yes, thank you, unknown LinkedIn user. We appreciate it.
Earl, so much to learn. Yeah, and conquer. It's so much to learn and conquer. That is a deep topic. So like when dealers are asking me about their reinsurance programs, I'm like, I know enough to get me dangerous, you know, because a lot of these guys are asking those deep-seated questions. I mean, just like what you shared. I mean, that's something that they have to take in consideration. They need a good advisor. They need someone who is willing to be transparent with them to go over some of these important questions on how to properly identify that. Because at the end of the day, you know, if you're not, what kind of insurance program do you really have, right? You know, what kind of benefit are you getting from it? Great show, Chris Kerr said. And Kim, love having Steve. Love having. Looking forward to using the app to drive after sale.
Yeah,
Wow,
it's a great program.
Are they in Canada?
Sorry,
is Steve there?
I think he was. He may have logged off, but
no, I'm saying in Canada. I didn't know if he had gotten there yet.
I would think he probably is, and the fact that Kim is mentioning that she's loving having the SDX online claim system for their customers, their dealers, they must be. So I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy they're here. They're taking advantage of that up there. No, it's, you know, I'll say this, Becky, that there's a lot of stuff today. There was an article that came out, I don't remember what publication was, but about reinsurance. And they try to get very technical and try to make it much more complicated than it is. You know, it drives me crazy when I see somebody write an article or an email, and these gentlemen did not, this author did not, but they say you're going to seed premium, and they spell it like a seed that you plant, not CEDE. Like seeding business into a reinsurance company. You don't have to make it hard. You don't have to talk above people's heads. It's basic math. It's foreign to a lot of us. It's not like reading a financial statement at the dealership level. It's different accounting. And so once they can get their head around that, then they can start looking at the more technical things and the different things like, what domicile should I be in? Should I be in a DOWC? Should I be in an NCFC? Should I have multiple reinsurance companies? And something that we didn't talk about, but there's a lot of dealers that have multiple reinsurance companies if they're multi-unit dealers, and they give partners their reinsurance company so they can have a piece of the pie and drive the production and keep the costs down by making sure that they've got skin in the game. So,
well, that's pretty cool. That's something that maybe I didn't hear about before. So, there's a lot of play with this DOWC.
mm-hmm.
More and more dealers are seeing the advantage to dealer-owned warranty company. And
Right.
then there's times when you would say, maybe not the best way to go.
Right.
Could you, I don't know whether or not you want to share that with us as to why not? Why wouldn't it be okay for one dealer versus another? If it's too deep to go into that rabbit hole, I get it. And I wanted to say thank you, Ted Ings. I'm glad you're able to make it tonight.
Oh, he's a very influential gentleman in our industry. Good to see him online.
He sure is. He plays big time in that fixed ops roundtable. I got to tell you, he knows everybody.
Absolutely, he does. And impacts his efforts impact, reinsurance. But as it relates to DOWCs, I'll say this: that if it's a dealer who is growing, and by that I mean has bought a small, franchise, small in volume, and knows that he can grow that volume, or a dealer who's buying multiple stores and his volume's going to continue to grow, it may be a good play for them. It gives them the opportunity to get their hands on some cash to make those acquisitions, to help them in those acquisitions. But it's also a different kind of philosophy. You're using the cash flow from that company more so than you are looking at the long-term underwriting profit and investment income. You're playing on net operating losses. So that means the way the accounting works, by taking the sale price, that's the customer buys the service contract for $3,500. That's what the reinsurance company shows as their cost. And then they pay back to the dealership the commission, whether it's $1,000, $1,500, whatever that may be. That expense gets put to the bottom line, and that shows the net operating loss, which just gives them the opportunity not to have to pay taxes because they're losing money on paper for years to come. At some point, you can't kick the can down the street any longer. You're going to have to do something. And from what I hear, there's a lot of people that go, oh, well, then you set up a 831B corporation and you don't have to deal with it. Maybe you can. I don't know. I'm not a tax guy. I'm not a lawyer. I just know that for some people, it's the right move. I think it's better for larger dealers than it is for, regular, not independent, necessarily non-franchise, but it's not the right move, in my opinion, to a dealer who wants to build a nest egg and retire one day using that nest egg, or use that money when sales slow down and he needs to take money out for his own living.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it is super critical that dealers really have a better understanding of each model that they go with and why they do what they do. And right. There's nothing better than talking through that with someone who's an expert. And right. And I think that's so important, because if we're going to go through the effort of impacting that performance, whether it be in sales, desk, or F&I service, we need to make sure that it's positively impacting that book of business. So it all goes hand in hand. And so really being able to contact professionals like yourself to be able to have that conversation where it's not over their heads, that they're able to understand it so they can grasp truly what is the best way to go. Building that partnership and that relationship seems really critical to me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I'm glad to talk to the dealer The agent, I'm not here to make somebody's life miserable. I'm here to help somebody. So I want to make the agent, the third-party administrator, the insurance company look like rock stars to their client, the dealer. And I want the dealer to make the most money they can out of their reinsurance company. That's why we all come to work in our industry, is to help the dealers make more money. And it's pretty simple if you all work together and educate your own people. If you're an agency, you have to educate your people on reinsurance. If you're a third-party administrator, you need to educate your people on reinsurance. They don't need to be experts. They don't need to become tax experts or legal experts on it. They just need to understand the basics to be able to help them.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because part of what I do as well, not only working with auto dealers, work with agents, and you and I have that conversation. And that is something that is so important, being able to provide that experience, right? Whether it be reinsurance, whether it be training and new content. And or even for myself, allied industry professionals. But at the end of the day, you're there for the dealer, you're there for the agent to walk them through, to make sure that they have, a rock solid relationship and they know what they're talking about doing.
Yeah.
Like someone like myself, and I tap into Randy, like,
that's what we're here for, Becky. Yeah. And when I need training, I'll be calling you.
For training, call me. When it comes to reinsurance, call Randy.
Right.
That's what it's all about. So before we go ahead and call it an evening, is there any last comments you want to share with anyone and everyone?
No, just that, have fun. It's a great industry. I've been, started in '88, so I'm in my 36th, 37th year now. Can't imagine doing anything else. I love doing this. And I hope everybody that's online here does too. And I think they do. They wouldn't be online here at 9 o'clock Eastern time talking about how we can help dealers make more money.
Well, this was great because, normally I cut it down, but, with all the interaction, all the questions, all the feedback, everyone was super excited that you were here with me tonight. I'm glad you were able to be here with me tonight. I finally convinced Randy to come on into my life with me. He felt sorry for me. Keep asking, you might get it. So I do
happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity and the platform. And I appreciate everybody that logged in and had comments and didn't have comments. It was great.
Well, it's super cool. So again, guys, thank you again for being on tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing you next Thursday at 8 p.m. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.